everybody. This is Congressman Mike Levin. I hope that you're doing well and you're staying safe and healthy. Thanks again for joining us for another great discussion. I am pleased to introduce our guest. With us today is Danny Fitzgerald, the Associate Regional Director for the San Diego and Imperial Small Business Development Center. Danny's going to help me answer some of your small business related questions later on. Danny, it's great to see you. How are you?
Doing very well, Congressman. Thank you for having me on.
Fantastic. And before we dive into our discussion and specifically what we're working on in Washington, D.C. right now, the American Rescue Plan, I want to again implore everyone, please continue following all the mitigation efforts and practices to help protect each other, such as wearing a mask and avoiding large gatherings. As you know, our country has surpassed now 525,000 who have tragically lost their lives as a result of COVID-19. It is a heartbreaking tragedy for our nation. California now has confirmed over 3.6 million cases and approaching 55,000 deaths. And as we've said now for the past year, the best way we can get through this pandemic is to follow the steps that we know will help control community spread, particularly as more and more people get vaccinated. It's so important that here we are, the light is at the end of the tunnel. We cannot lose sight of that, and we cannot fail to adhere to the things that we know will work to prevent community spread. So our first line of defense should still be to protect yourself, protect your neighbors, wear your mask, wash your hands, socially distance, etc. And if you can get vaccinated, obviously, I encourage you, I implore you to get vaccinated as soon as you can. We've seen great news about the availability of vaccines, even as recently as today with 100 million more doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. That follows up great announcements on Pfizer and Moderna as well. So my great hope is that by the end of May, all adults will have the opportunity to get vaccinated, and that will hopefully get us on a path where we're able to eradicate this pandemic and get back to our normal lives again. I know I'm eager to do that. I'm sure you are too, Danny. And, I think it's important that we kind of frame where we are today legislatively. We have had, of course, a whole year now of this pandemic and a number of efforts in the Congress. Today is very, very exciting because we're going to be passing the American Rescue Plan. And this is President Biden's comprehensive relief bill that brings critical aid back to our district, back to the communities in need across the country. And look, the reality is that there are people who are hurting tremendously. We speak with them. Our office speaks with them. I personally interact every single week. I hear more stories from people who are really hurting right now and who need help. And the American Rescue Plan is designed to meet the challenges that we're facing, both the public health crisis and the economic crisis, head on with solutions that are actually commensurate with the scope and the scale of the challenges. It's a national tragedy when people can't keep their businesses open, when people have invested their time and their labor in a small business and they can't keep it open due to this pandemic. And there's a lot in this bill for small businesses, and we'll be asking Danny to share more about that in a minute. I also think that it's important that in addition to the direct payments that everyone's aware of, the expanded unemployment insurance that people are aware of, we talk about what's being done for nutrition. There's a lot in here to help feed hungry families and support organizations like the North County Food Bank, for example, by extending the SNAP maximum benefits by 15%, allocating another $800 million for WIC to support low-income women and infants, and expand eligibility for paycheck protection loans to nonprofits of all sizes and all types, 501cs, to help those like our local food banks who desperately need relief. The PPP funds are also critical for our small businesses as they have been through the pandemic, and there's another $7.25 billion in additional funding, and a restaurant revitalization fund, which is a $28.6 billion fund for restaurants and bars. And hopefully, Danny, you can share more about the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. I'm really excited about it because I've heard directly from our restaurant owners in our district who are really struggling, who've tried to do everything right over the last year to adhere to all the different regulations and back and forth, open and close and partially open and open outdoors and all the rest, and they are looking for relief, and this legislation provides them with that much needed relief. Another issue I wanted to briefly touch on is how this bill will help our veterans. I'm very honored to be the vice chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee. Very honored to represent our Marines and sailors at Camp Pendleton and everybody in the surrounding area. And there is a lot of good for our veterans in this legislation. $386 million for a rapid retraining program. It's going to get about, the idea is to get around 17,000 veterans back to work through this program. Now, I'd like to see it go even further than that. We had legislation in the last Congress to help 35,000 veterans get back to work, but the $386 million in this bill is a huge deal and is a big step in the right direction. We're really encouraged by that. And then another piece of this that I'd like to highlight is the direct funding for smaller cities. Now, you hear a lot about state and local government. The CARES Act last year had $150 billion for state and local government, but if you're a city under 500,000, for example, all of the cities in the 49th district are under 500,000. Carlsbad, Oceanside, Vista, Encinitas, Solana Beach, San Juan Capistrano, Dana Point, San Clemente, Del Mar are all smaller than 500,000, and they receive no direct funding as a result of that. And that's been the case straight through. But the American Rescue Plan has direct funding for those cities. And this is huge because our local cities, because we are heavily dependent on tourism in our region, they have been hit very hard by this pandemic. And some cities have been forced to cut services or to lay people off or do furloughs or cancel new projects or postpone projects. And I'm really excited. Oceanside's going to get over $33 million, $27 million for Vista, over $13 million for Carlsbad, and the list goes on. There's around $106, $107 million total in the bill for the cities, the smaller cities in our district. I am thrilled. And I'll tell you, that is bipartisan as it gets. Our Republican mayors, just like our Democratic mayors, they know that those funds are important. And this is a broadly popular part of the American Rescue Plan. The American people have endured this pandemic now for a year, and they cannot and should not have to wait anymore for additional relief to make it through what I hope and believe optimistically to be the last part of this pandemic. We're in the third quarter or the beginning of the fourth quarter is how one of the epidemiologists referred to it recently, and I certainly hope and believe that to be the case, and help is on the way. So with that, I want to turn it over to our guest, Danny, for some opening remarks. Danny, it's great to see you.
Great to see you too as well, Congressman. I appreciate you having me on, and it's very exciting with some of the additions that are coming up. Again, happy to be part of the Small Business Relief at the Small Business Development Center. We are a resource partner of the U.S. Small Business Administration. We've been around for over 40 years. The San Diego and Imperial region has been part of the community for well over 20 years, serving both serving your district and of course the entire San Diego and Imperial County region, and of course we have our counterparts as well in Orange County. So our job really is to provide no-cost business one-on-one assistance. We've been providing literally tens of thousands of hours of that. Last year alone was almost 25,000 hours of one-on-one assistance. That is working like this on a Zoom meeting, on a phone call with business owners, helping them get through the pandemic and even still the entrepreneurial spirit, even start businesses. And so we're very excited about all the programs and the assistance. Right now, we're still in the process of implementing all the programs that came about in the December package. Still with the release of the Paycheck Protection Program and the second draw. And of course, last week, the SBA updated the rules with the Biden administration, allowing sole proprietors without employees to now get a PPP loan, which is much more favorable for them because it is based on gross income, not net profit. That can be the difference of a loan of $3,000, potentially up to $21,000. And again, these loans are fully forgivable, which means they can become a grant if you use them for eligible or allowable expenses. So the deadline for that's coming up soon. I highly encourage you to contact us to get your assistance on a PPP, because for sole proprietors in the San Diego region, that's only about 280,000 business entities. So we definitely know they need the help, and so forth. We're also still working on the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, which is also kind of nice and no pun intended, or maybe pun intended, setting the stage for the restaurant relief grant as well. And so that's blazing the trail. And so the SBA is releasing information on that. We're working closely with our independent venues, so that way they can take advantage of that. And then once that program is out, the SBA will be, after the bill passes, be able to release the one for the restaurants, which will work very similar to the Shuttered venue. So we're excited about all the work. We know that we're coming up on the end, but there's still a lot of small businesses that have a lot of residual impact. This has been a long, hard year, and these programs are very needed for the small businesses. So thank you for having me, Congressman, to be able to talk more about them and the help that we provide.
Well, thank you, Danny. I'm incredibly grateful for all the work that you're doing at the SBDC, helping our small businesses. And I wanted to start with just a few questions for you that I have, and then we'll go straight to questions from our constituents for both of us. As I mentioned earlier, the American Rescue Plan has $28.6 billion for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, another $7.25 billion for the Paycheck Protection Program. Can you explain the importance of those programs for small businesses and share any information that you have about the best way that local small business owners can apply to receive the funds?
So the main thing, we're here to help you, as well as our counterparts with the SBA, the local district office. We're a resource partner. So we're actually a staff of about 120 as a grant-funded partner of the SBA, providing that type of free assistance. While the SBA district office, they do fantastic work, there's 5 of them. And so there just becomes a staffing issue for that. And so we work in partnership with them. That's why the SBA has us as resource partners. And again, our assistance is free. And so they're able to reach out to us. We can help you walk through those particular programs. So let's start with the Paycheck Protection Program, because that's open now and does have a bit of a clock ticking on it as well. And that is a way in which businesses are able to get working capital into their business. This is not something for buying new products or anything like this, but it is purely to support the operations of the business. So if a business, for example, let's take that sole proprietor, if they had a gross income in 2019, because again, it's all based on pre-pandemic information. That's still a confusing thing because it's been a long time and people think, oh, I need to base it on 2020. No, this is all the way back to 2019, because that's what we're trying, what these programs are trying to do is replace that lost revenue for you. And so you look at that, you had a $60,000 net profit for say your side business that you were working on or something like that, you're eligible for a loan up to $15,000. And if you spend it on eligible expenses, which are the operations of your business, including paying yourself, that loan can be fully forgivable, meaning it can become a grant. And so that's where it's so beneficial. This is an injection of capital for the business to survive. And that's what this really is trying to do, is create that bridge that when you go all the way back to, I remember talking to you, Congressman, last April when the Paycheck Protection Program rolled out, and thinking it was only going to be 8 weeks, and well, here we are in month 12. And so that's why it's great to have another injection of this type of operating capital to just be able to help these businesses survive. Same thing for the restaurant revitalization, as well as Shuttered Venue. We can probably talk about them together because these are 2 of the most impacted industries because of the types of closures, the loss of revenue. And so in addition to PPP or part of that program, these are actual grant programs where they're able to get a revenue replacement based upon what their 2019 revenue was. So that way they can continue operation, keep doors open, keep staff employed. And that way, when we get through this, hopefully, as the Congressman says, this summer, we can really start to see some differences and maybe go see some live music and enjoy a good meal.
Danny, I'm making a list. Actually, we've already made the list, my wife and I, of all the places that we want to go in the district, lots of our favorite restaurants and venues and so forth. We're excited to be able to do that in the months ahead. And I just want to, again, thank you in advance for all the businesses, restaurants, and others that you're going to be helping in the coming months to make sure that they know about these programs, take advantage of them, apply for them, and help keep their businesses afloat until the pandemic is finally over, which hopefully will be soon. Another question for you. I discussed the funding in the intro a bit for local governments and specifically for our cities in the 49th. And we've been fighting for this for a year, for the smaller cities in particular. But can you talk about your relationship with local cities when it comes to supporting small businesses, some of the services that they provide? And I'll just add that the cities, thankfully, the way that this legislation is written, the cities are going to have a lot of latitude to be able to do things like help small businesses with these funds. So if you could speak to some of that work would be great.
Absolutely. Our partnership with cities couldn't be, stronger or even more important. And we always have worked closely with the cities and their economic development staff, their development services staff, helping businesses navigate whatever it is they need to do with, as part of businesses. But I think when we look back even to the CARES Act funding, we know that, yes, it didn't make it to the small cities, but fortunately the County of San Diego did provide some of their funding to some of the smaller cities. But what was impressive is those cities turned around and gave that money out also. So we worked closely with the cities of Oceanside, Carlsbad, San Marcos, Vista, Escondido, all of those that you were talking about, as they established their grant programs for small businesses, where they were able to get money on the street to be able to help, again, how these businesses continue to have some operating money, to be able to pay their rent, be able to pay their electric bill, and really be able to keep the doors open. Beyond that, I think the other fantastic way that cities have been super supportive and super aggressive and bold is in the ever adapting of their own rules and regulations to the public health orders. There's no better example than outdoor dining, how fast cities were able to move and be able to create specific ordinances and specific processes to be able to, all right, you don't need as many parking spaces. All right, these are the things you need to do to be able to immediately operate on an outdoor basis and really to be able to at least continue to allow, in particular, our restaurants to be able to continue to have these. And, the city staffs, I couldn't applaud them more for the hard work and the dedication that they have had. I've seen emails come in from them as early as 5 a.m. and as late as 11 o'clock at night. I know they're working hard for small businesses too.
Well, thanks for that, Kenny. Another question for you. You're in touch with small businesses all day, every day. And I'm curious what you're hearing from them about the American Rescue Plan and perhaps what they're excited about, and then what the other challenges may be that they're facing that we might be missing on the federal level.
So I think the main thing I hear is that they're excited that they're going to be able to get a little bit more relief. I talked to them about, months of backlog of bills. I mean, that in short. I talked to them about the fact that they want to be able to get their staff back operating. These are the things that really I hear, and that's why these types of programs, which are the capital relief, are so critical for them. I think the other thing I hear is still, and that's where our role comes in, is understanding how the programs work, because yes, while they are simple when you look at them one-on-one, the fact that you have multiple programs from the federal government, programs from the state of California, like the California Relief Grant, you have local programs like the city grants that I have, people oftentimes just mix up one versus the other, especially since it's that, what I've heard as a term is the pandemic panic. And, we try and work with them, help them go, okay, let's understand your business structure, and walk them through what really are the best programs for them, which are going to get them relief. And also understand that way, hey, you're not eligible for a particular program. Like, for example, let's take the shuttered venues. There are, it wasn't real clear. It is now who would be and who isn't eligible. And it's nice to know, okay, I'm not eligible, that's fine. And then make sure you get your PPP. I think those are some of the things that we're hearing. But just to have an additional injection of capital into the market, into their businesses, just to allow them to survive is the most important thing.
Thanks so much, Tony. Plenty of questions from constituents. We'll get to as many as we can. John in Oceanside says, it seems like a lot of the smallest businesses in our area don't have the staff, time, or resources to go through the entire process of applying for these programs. Does the SBDC do most of the work for them, or how does it work?
So we don't do necessarily the work for you. We guide you, hold your hand, tell you what you need to do. Because a lot of these programs, they're not that tricky, but they are tricky to understand. So the work that we do for you is we read the rules, and that's the biggest thing that we do. So, when programs come out, after what happens today with the congressman, they vote on it, get signed into law, but then the program has to be administered and implemented. And so that results in documents that are 30 plus pages of rules. So we read that so that way you don't have to. So that way we can distill it to information of a simple checklist of what you need. So for example, with a PPP, we'll give you a checklist of the 3 to 7 things documents you need, help you understand what they are, and then understand the nature of your business and what that would work to do it. And then if needed, can help you get in contact with a lender who will also be able to make sure you're able to get the loan. So really, while we don't do all the work for you, we do a lot of the interpretation, distill it down, and make it a lot easier for you to go through the process.
Thank you, Danny. Liz in Dana Point asks, how exactly is the $1.9 trillion plan going to put people back in jobs? Well, Liz, thank you for the question. As we've discussed, there is funding in this bill for small businesses, for restaurants. That's why Danny is here today to discuss that. And that's just to help these establishments stay afloat, keep workers on payroll. Your favorite local restaurants can get relief from the Restaurant Revitalization Fund to help keep the servers and cooks and others on the job. The funding for our local governments will help keep our local cities' payrolls intact, and to help keep first responders and frontline public health workers and teachers and our transit workers and our sanitation workers, other essential employees on the job that we all depend on, by the way. And the bill has money for, again, nearly $400 million for up to 12 months of rapid retraining for our veterans. We think that's going to help with many thousands of veterans who are looking to get back to work or who've been particularly impacted by that. And that's for those that don't have access to other veteran education benefits like the GI Bill that slipped through the cracks. That's why that was so important. Then I would also turn to the $130 billion in here for K through 12 schools and the important role that will play in getting schools safely reopened, which will help not only the administrative staff, the classified school employees and teachers and others at those schools, but getting our kids back in classrooms as safely and as quickly as we can. That helps everybody looking to get back into the workforce. So those are just a few examples of how the bill is going to keep people on the job or put people back to work. And I think it's thoughtful, and it's hopefully we'll be able to look back, as I was saying to Danny before we jumped on, be able to look back in a year or 2 or 5 and know that the American Rescue Plan got it right, and that the economy will be back approaching full employment much sooner than otherwise, and that the pandemic is under control. I think this bill, the American Rescue Plan, has the components that it will take to actually deal with these crises, both from a public health and an economic standpoint. Thank you for the question. Vanessa in Vista has a question. The bill was sent through without any Republican support. What was their behind the door reasoning for not supporting the American people? Well, Vanessa, I wasn't privy to it. I wasn't behind the door in the Republican conference, but I won't pretend to know their motives in opposing the bill. But what I can tell you is that at the local level, the bill is very popular with a lot of Republicans. Our Republican mayors, as an example, all support the local cities receiving the funds that are coming their way. I think that Republicans in Washington are sometimes disconnected from Republicans across the country. And I'm not saying that all Republicans across the country support the bill, but in the data and the polling that I've seen, this bill has anywhere between 65 to 80% support. And those numbers are huge. That includes anywhere from a third to 40 or even higher percentages of the average Republican voter. So I think on this particular legislation, and that's when you tell people what's in the bill. When you talk about the direct payments, the unemployment insurance, the money for small businesses and for vaccines and for education and all the rest, 65 to 80% in the polling that I've seen support the American Rescue Plan. I would talk about one of the arguments that I hear and that I certainly can relate to, and that's concerns about our national debt. What I can tell you there is that Moody's Analytics and others, conservative economists, moderate economists, have looked at this, and they basically have said that we can choose to take big and bold action to try to stem the worst of this virus and to try to bring the economy back to full employment as quickly as we can, or we can not do that, and we'll suffer the consequences of our inaction. And ultimately, we're not left with any ideal choices here. We either have to go big and get it right, try to eradicate the pandemic, try to bring the economy back to full employment, or if we don't take those actions, there's far more risk that economists across the board have stated for doing too little as opposed to too much. According to Moody's, also, the American Rescue Plan will generate $1.25 in economic activity for every dollar of government spending. So I'm cognizant of the amount of money that we're talking about here, both this bill and then throughout the pandemic, what this is cost. But I'm also cognizant that if we do nothing, the impact will be much worse for our businesses, for our families, for our children, et cetera. So I appreciate the question, Vanessa. Karen in Del Mar asks, why exactly is the funding for local governments so important? Well, Karen, as I alluded to at the outset, our cities, particularly in a district like ours, they have lost significant revenue. And when you think about the reliance of our community on tourism, on transit occupancy taxes, the hotels, the restaurants, they have been devastated by this throughout our communities that rely so heavily. And that has meant that they've been forced to cut services, to furlough or lay off employees, and to postpone or cancel new projects. I know in San Juan Capistrano is one example. They had to furlough employees over the holidays, and so some workers may have gone unpaid throughout the holidays, and that was a terrible thing that had to happen. But I have pushed very, very hard, as I've said repeatedly for the last year, to anybody that would listen, that there were a lot of things that were right in the CARES Act, but one of the things I thought we got wrong was the lack of funding for smaller cities. And the example that I would always use is what happened with regard to Long Beach and Fresno. Long Beach is a city of just under 500,000 people. They got zero in direct federal assistance under the CARES Act. Fresno, I don't mean to pick on Fresno, but they're a city of just over 500,000, and they got almost $100 million in direct assistance from the CARES Act. So as one example, the funding formula clearly was not equitable, and we fought and we got this money. Again, $33 million for Oceanside, $27 million for Vista, $13 million for Carlsbad, and the list goes on. And the key there, in addition to the amount of money, is that the mayors and the city councils and the city managers will have a fair amount of latitude about how that money is spent. And I trust that as the plans are developed by each of the local cities, that I'll be very excited to hear how they're going to spend those funds and how we can partner and work together to make sure the community is informed about that. Jason in San Juan Capistrano has one for you, Danny. Does the SBDC still provide assistance for people who want to start a new business, or are you just focused on helping existing small businesses get federal relief?
I love this question. And what it does is it points out the entrepreneurial spirit. And the answer is absolutely 100% yes. Just as an example, even in this last year, we helped over 140 businesses start. And that was during the pandemic. And so we continue to have our programming around business starts. We have basic programming just kind of in general for what we call our start your business in a day. We have some very, higher level, advanced training for companies that are looking to scale, which we call our Lean Essential Sprint. We have some industry specific ones, such as, if you're looking to do a home-based food business, cottage food, we have programming around that. And something that we're very proud of is that we continue to help many, many different, in particular, low-income women of color started in-home or family daycare business. And so we've helped, again, like I said, over 140 businesses start this last year, and we're already starting to see the uptick again with entrepreneurship and helping folks be able to start their businesses and really be able to, again, have that entrepreneurial spirit that is so strong in our region.
Thank you for that, Danny. I want to make sure our constituents know exactly how much their cities are slated to get as a result of the American Rescue Plan. And I'm going to very briefly go through this list. We don't have that many cities, Danny, so it won't take that
No
long.
worries.
Oceanside, 33,412,000. These are approximate. I'm not going to the exact penny, but 33,412,000 for Oceanside, 26,675,000 for Vista, 13,376,000 for Carlsbad, 8,878,000 for Encinitas, 8,876,000 for San Clemente, 6,320,000 for Dana Point, 6,759,000 for San Juan Capistrano, 2,502,000 for Solana Beach, 812,900 for Del Mar. Every city in the 49th gets significant help and the latitude to be able to do with that money what they feel is in the best interest to help get their cities back on track. And that can certainly include help for our small businesses. Pretty exciting, pretty exciting. Another question for you, Danny. This is from Nick in Carlsbad, who asks, I know the problem with PPP in the beginning was that big companies were getting most of the benefits. Can Mr. Fitzgerald talk about some of the changes to PPP and explain if it's any easier for the smallest businesses to get funding now? Excellent question.
I'm very glad to have that question. And in short, the answer is absolutely 100% yes. It is easier for small businesses. The SBA, and even with the legislation that came about in December with kind of the second round of PPP, was putting a priority on smaller businesses by having a special set aside for community banks and community development financial institutions, which are oftentimes nonprofit lenders, which focus on the smallest of the businesses. And then, like I was saying earlier, in particular, the most recent rule update where then a sole proprietor, because most sole proprietors, they're looking to write off most of their business expenses and have a lower tax burden. And so as such, now being able to use it on gross income as opposed to net profit, that is going to mean a significant amount of money, a significant increase for them, and making it much easier for them. So right now, the priority is if you never got a PPP in 2020, there actually is a specific set-aside amount of money, so that won't run out. And then there also still is a set-aside, even if you did get one, and you can get a larger second drop PPP based upon that gross income, there's a specific set aside for that. And so I think both the SBA as well as Congress with the recent legislation really did put a particular emphasis and a particular understanding of what happened last April and really target making sure that the smallest businesses have equal access to PPP and the funds.
And that's how the Restaurant Revitalization Fund is structured as well, right? So smaller restaurants will be the beneficiaries of those funds as well, is what I've read.
That's my understanding as well. And as it rolls out and gets implemented there, I'm sure there will be, the SBA is very good at targeting now with some of those rules and some of the lessons that they've learned to making sure the smallest restaurants also have equal access as well as some of the larger entities.
Well, I'm thinking of some of our local restaurants. You know who you are, and I've heard you loud and clear, and help is on the way. And I hope you're able to apply and receive these funds, and that'll help get you through hopefully these last few months of this pandemic until we can get back to some semblance of normal. One other thing that I want to mention that's so critically important in this legislation, and it's particularly important to me as the father of two young children, is the amount in there to help eradicate child poverty. There is a huge challenge with child poverty in the United States. It's only been exacerbated by the pandemic. And this bill, by making the child tax credit fully refundable, will help take 4.1 million children out of poverty. That is a huge deal. And I can tell you, my wife, Christy, and I, as the parents of young children, thinking about our children in the community, that is something both from a values perspective, a public policy perspective, it's just the right thing to do. And you're seeing more and more bipartisan support around that concept. I hope that we're able to work with our colleagues across the aisle. I know that Mitt Romney, as an example, has a child poverty bill and others as well. So I hope we're able to continue those discussions and eradicate child poverty in the United States. And I'm really happy that the American Rescue Plan begins that process, at least through the pandemic. Joanne in Oceanside asks, is this the last big COVID relief bill that Congress is going to do? Boy, I hope so, Joanne. Any chance that there will be another round of stimulus checks? Well, Joanne, as you know, we have had three big, this is the third of three big COVID relief bills. The first was the CARES Act last March. And then, of course, we had the end of the year omnibus legislation, which was a major spending package, which included about $900 billion for COVID relief. There were some other bills last year. One important one at the very beginning was $8 billion for the development of the vaccine. That turned out to be pretty important, I can tell you. And I remember a year ago when I did, I think, my first interview about COVID-19, went on one of our local stations, and it was specifically to talk about the $8 billion that we'd secured for the vaccine. The administration came to us and they wanted $1.5 billion, and working with the Senate, we increased that amount to $8 billion. And I'm sure glad that we did that because, you know, Operation Warp Speed and everything that has happened subsequent has been so critically important to being able to consider getting back to normal. And we've gone through a lot. I don't think we are going to have another round of checks after this. That's my guess. I think we're getting very close to where we'll be back to, again, some semblance of normal, hopefully very soon. Based on everything we're seeing from the epidemiologists, we're still concerned about these variants, although it looks like at least some of these vaccines are quite effective against those variants. I know we're looking at different variants from different places like the UK and Brazil and so forth, but it looks pretty promising, pretty encouraging. You know, you never know for certain. What I will say, though, is this bill is called the Rescue Plan because that's what it is. It's about just getting us back to, you know, where the economy is creating jobs, not losing them, where money is being spent wisely and prudently by the American people, where they're not worried about the roof over their head or having enough to eat. Very basic stuff. And eventually, I hope in the summer, we'll be able to pivot from rescue to recovery. And recovery meaning really, as the president would say, building back better. You remember he ran on Build Back Better as part of his campaign, a big part of his campaign. And that means infrastructure, means creating the great jobs of the future, including in industries like clean energy, where our district and our region is so incredibly well positioned to lead on things like clean energy. And I think we're going to do it. I know there's going to be a very spirited debate, Danny, about how we pay for it all. I'm watching closely some of the conversations, like Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia has said that he wants the entire infrastructure bill paid for, and he's discussed some fairly specific parts of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that would be looked at. I can tell you that we're committed to building back better and to working with the administration, working with our colleagues in the Senate. What I hope is a bipartisan process where we can get the best ideas from both parties and work really hard on, again, something that we can be proud of, just as I think we will be very proud of the American Rescue Plan a year, 2, 5, 10 years down the road, knowing that we did everything we could during this difficult time. And I will continue to say what I've been saying for the last 3 or 4 years, which is that we have a tremendous opportunity to lead on accelerating the transition to sustainability, whether it be the type of vehicles we drive, the type of agriculture, the type of buildings that we build, the way we generate electricity. All of it will change dramatically over the next 20 or 30 years. And fundamentally, the question that I think we have to ask is whether those changes, the innovations, the manufacturing, the jobs that are created, will they be created here in the United States, and specifically in Southern California, in our district, or will we be using products that were innovated, manufactured in China, in India, in Europe, and other parts of the world? I certainly hope that we lead, and I hope that the federal government works with industry to make sure that that's the case. The other thing is our infrastructure is badly outdated in the United States, and we have a great opportunity to do a lot of big things. When I think about our region specifically, the huge impact on our region of the Losan Rail Corridor, which connects San Diego to Los Angeles, and the need for that rail corridor to not just be something that is temporarily okay until the next major bluff collapse, but to really think through on a permanent basis, what does this rail corridor need to look like 100 years from now? And how can we invest? Think of all the jobs that that would create, the tens of thousands of jobs to firm up that rail corridor. Just the same with the opportunity to do something big at the Nabor site with the idea around a Grand Central, if you will, for the region. And then, of course, with the expansion of Otay Mesa and the importance of our port of entry to goods and commerce and international trade. So these are all huge, huge infrastructure opportunities that we have, and we're going to work really hard. I know our whole San Diego delegation is going to work really hard to try to do whatever we can with the new administration to prioritize these major projects, while at the same time focusing on the infrastructure projects that remain very important along our coast, making sure that our coastal erosion and our bluff collapses are under control, and that we do all we can to mitigate them in the future. So a lot of really, really exciting times ahead as it regards recovery and infrastructure and action on climate. Danny, it's an exciting time to be here. That's all I can tell you. It's an exciting time to be here. And I just want to thank you again for all that helpful information. I want to thank you again for all the work that you're doing for small businesses. And I want to give you an opportunity to give some closing remarks, and also be sure to let our audience know how, if they are a small business and they need assistance, how they can be in touch with you.
Absolutely. And so thank you again, Congressman. I know that there's been a lot of work, and it's been a long slog. And as you said, I hope that we are in that fourth quarter, and absolutely hope that this is not an overtime situation. And but we're here to help as for small businesses. So the best way to reach us, I'm going to say it a couple of times here, but number one is if you reach us on our website, which is sdivsbdc.org. So sdivsbdc.org. And that's where you can contact us. You can sign up for our services. You can find our webinars. You can find all the types of assistance that I've been talking about. But I think that the main thing is we're here to help small businesses. We were here pre-pandemic as the economy was in kind of, I guess, our normalcy, where we're helping businesses start, helping, hundreds of businesses start each year, helping thousands of businesses access capital, both debt and equity, and really be able to grow and thrive, create the small business ecosystem of Southern California, in particular, the San Diego region. And of course, during the pandemic, we've helped literally tens of thousands of businesses access PPP and EIDL, but there's still more work to do. As the congressman said, we're still in the rescue phase. We're still responding. Businesses are still closed. Businesses are still operating at partial speed, and they need the capital. And that's how we're helping them to be able to access that capital. We know that there still is a lot of open wounds from the last year, as it were, where they need that capital assistance to pay back bills, to pay back rent, to pay back utility bills, supplier bills, and most importantly, of course, their employees if they have them. If you don't have employees, you are not excluded from these programs. I need to emphasize that more and more, that if you are an independent contractor, you are self-employed, you are a sole proprietor, you're a gig worker, whatever the term is, you are still eligible for these programs. And do not forget that you can reach out to us, again, sdivsbdc.org. We can get you some assistance you need, help you navigate these programs. We understand that they're confusing and that there's a lot coming at you fast, and maybe you've heard from a friend or a neighbor or things like that. We're here to help you kind of cut through that, determine what's the best for you, and help you get the applications in, so that way you can get a PPP. If you are a restaurant, be prepared for the restaurant revitalization grant. If you're a shuttered venue, be able to help you access that grant program, and of course, any of the other state and local programs as well. So again, Congressman, appreciate the hard work you do and the fantastic partnership we have with your office.
Well, the feeling is mutual, Danny. I appreciate you. I'm grateful for all that you're doing for our small businesses, and for everybody listening to this in the small business community and the restaurant community. Help is on the way with the American Rescue Plan. So we're very, very excited about that. I wanted to, before we go, I wanted to thank our whole team that puts these together, our great Chief of Staff here in DC, Kara Van Stralen, our comms director, Eric Mee. I want to thank the whole legislative team for all their great work. over the last several very, very busy weeks with our Deputy Chief of Staff, Jonathan Gilbert, and the crew. I want to thank our whole district office team, Francine and Kyle and everybody working so hard, particularly on all this casework during COVID-19 and all the unique challenges that it has brought to bear. And I want to encourage anybody in the community that needs our help, don't hesitate to reach out. We are here to assist. You can visit our website, mikelevin.house.gov, and we want to hear from you. I want to thank Jeremy, as always, for putting together the video, interactive video here as we do these. And you can also check it out via podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm excited about that. And I want to, obviously thank my wife and our family. My parents got vaccinated in Orange County. I'm super excited about that. My in-laws in Tucson, Arizona, they got their first shot yesterday, and I think are going to be getting their next shot soon. One of these days, my wife will get vaccinated. She's waiting, until it's her turn to get vaccinated. I'm excited about that. And before we do go, I wanted to end, as always, on some good news, which is that last weekend, I was really honored on Saturday morning to help celebrate the Festival of the Whales in Dana Point. This is a wonderful event, and this is the 50th anniversary of this event. And in particular, I was really thrilled to give a proclamation to Don Hansen. And Don is an incredible guy. He was one of the very first to popularize whale watching back in the 1960s. And he was instrumental, along with a number of community members, in making sure that Dana Point was recognized. In fact, they were recognized as the dolphin and whale capital of the world, and the only in North America to receive the honor for whale watching, and one of only 4 in the entire world. So thrilled at that. Congratulations to Don. Congratulations to everybody in Dana Point on the 50th anniversary of the Festival of the Whales. That's all for now. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.